Welcome to the Proper Talk. On set with me is our resident advisor when it comes to real estate, Mr. Wilberforce. Pleasure having you on set.
Thank you.
Uganda is home to 4,695 babies per day. That means population growth on a single day is 4,695 every single day in Uganda. Now that leads me to the question, as an economy, the housing sector, are we well equipped already for that growth?
Very interesting statistics, given the recently concluded population census.
Putting us at 43 million and
We are yet to see
roughly about.
even more statistics evolve about how our population trends are moving. But even with that birth rate that you've mentioned, and the fact that we are over 70% a youth population, it shows you the pressure and the need for housing, because that meaning the 70% of the population is still living under the care of their parents, or they are starting out to need a roof over their head on their own. Now that shows you the housing deficit, the pressure that is on the real estate market. Develop housing both for stay and for work. But of course, the biggest need now is for real estate housing to stay, because with the current trends, people can work from home.
Thanks to
So
COVID-19.
yes, so the biggest need now is real estate for stay, housing units for people to stay. I cannot say that we have enough housing for all Ugandans. The last statistics before this year's population census showed that we have a housing deficit of 2.4 million houses.
And that's what I talked about last week. Last week I said, when you look at the housing deficit gap of 2.4 million houses, it feels like it's underestimated.
Yes.
It's just not 2.4 million houses that
We expect
Ugandans
it to
need.
go higher
Yes.
with the current, with the recently concluded population census. So even if it's 3 million housing units, it just shows you that the need is growing higher and higher. And that goes all of us who are the players in the real estate sector, together with the government, to start to strategize now and think now for the next 20, 50, and 100 years to come.
On a percentage of 100%, every single year, the universities dish out at least 40% of graduates every single year. Now, these 40% of graduates are mostly people that are now starting a new life, approaching their own independence. And still, I get back to the question, as the real estate market, are we well equipped for those numbers?
Definitely, we are not well equipped in terms of the housing units available.
That is the answer I was looking for.
But there are solutions to all this.
And what are these solutions?
A human being will evolve about 3 stages. They will own about 3 homes in their life. First, they will rent a house. Okay. And those are the people we're talking about. Freshly from campus, they will need a unit. And probably they can start out in a studio apartment, which is more affordable, and they are still single, so it works. Next, once they start to earn income, maybe they've married, now living with a girlfriend or with a wife or with one son, they'll go to a 1 or 2 bedroom house. Then eventually they'll construct their own 3-bedroom house, and then later in life they'll do a country home. So a person will need about 3 or 4 housing units in their lifetime. Okay. Now, when we are addressing the housing need, we need to start with that understanding in mind to guide what we develop in real estate.
On your 3 housing stages you've mentioned, how many Ugandans can afford a studio apartment?
Studio apartments in Uganda haven't been a very common concept. And yet now we are advising so many real estate developers to go that direction. Why? Studio apartments meet the need of density. If we are to satisfy the housing demand that we have, we need to change the use of land. On a standard 12 decimal plot, how many units of real estate can you put?
Putting it in the layman's language, a 12 decimal plot is what size? Umanya Uganda basinga batagira 50 by 100, 100 by 100.
12 units,
12 decimals
are 50 by 100.
Okay.
It's the standard acreage plot that you can get. Now, we need to change the narrative and start looking at density. The countries that have managed their housing fairly well, I don't know of a country that has fully managed their housing need, but those who are performing fairly well, you find that they maximize the density. On a 50 by 100 plot, they put as many housing units as possible. We've seen this in India, we've
That
seen
is
this
high
in
rise.
China, we've seen this in New Zealand and so many other countries. That is high-rise buildings that can accommodate so many people on the same scale of land. And in Uganda, what we've been doing before is that I want to own a house on 1 acre, and it's only my 4-bedroom house, and I feel good about having it. If we are to meet the housing need that we have, we need to change the land use and the density and the quantity of housing we can put on every piece of land. But that goes back from our planning level, from government and the approvers of this real estate. We need to start to guide and zone land use to make sure that we encourage developers to do more high-rise buildings with much more units, so that the same piece of land can take a huge number of people, so that we have so many Ugandans being able to be accommodated in their housing units. Otherwise, if we continue constructing the way we do with very less density on a piece of land, then we can't satisfy the population that we have.
When you say we have to look at the density when we are constructing, how then are you going to be able to manage the issue of modern slums?
Slums and slum development has been a topic that has gone on world over.
Yes.
And it won't end.
And in Uganda, currently, we're seeing the major growth of modern slums.
I agree. However, the change of land use that I'm talking about is not necessarily subdividing land into smaller plots. That creates the slums. We still have the well demarcated standard pieces of land, but we put more high-rise properties that can accommodate more people. That means that even the design of the structures needs to change to make sure that we do properties that are on the same piece of land, high-rise, but have the amenities that they should. They still have playgrounds, they still have kids' play areas, they still have greenery within them, but still on that same piece of land. And this calls for government to research, and our architects and advisors of real estate to travel, learn, study countries that have done it, and see how we can implement it here. Otherwise, that's the only solution. Modern slums relate to subdividing land into very small pieces and putting substandard structures on them. But if we get the same piece of land, where I would put one bungalow, go higher, put about 5 floors, and make sure I put studio rooms, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments.
But do those actually cater for high-rise buildings in Uganda like we are looking at the future? Are those the only amenities we should be looking at?
No. You see, there's the question of affordable housing and decent housing. I think it should be a facility that has well-done drainage systems, that has well-done aeration systems, that has well-done security systems, fire and safety precautions, and all that. That's what we call a decent housing, where a person stays and it facilitates life in them for the production of children and a growth environment for children. Also, decent accommodation means one which is linked to facilities that support growth. We don't just stay in a home, we stay in a community. So we need to build communities that support. That's what I call decent housing. A community that has markets, that has well-done roads, that has churches, that has playgrounds, that has mosques, that has schools, that has health facilities. All that is encompassed in the decent place a person should stay. Because if you get an emergency, Christabel, at 3 a.m., you should be able to find a hospital within 2 kilometers of where you stay that is able to give you first aid, and also all that encompasses the decent housing that we want to happen in this country.
Now that takes me back to cost. Yes. Now, do you see that it comes down to the reality that Uganda is not yet ready for affordable housing or low-cost housing? Because if you mention all those come with a price.
I think it is affordable. I think it is doable if we intentionally focus on making it happen.
By we, who do you mean? Who do you mean?
I'm coming to that.
I like the way you're running away from low-cost housing. Ugandans do not need affordable housing. The highest percentage of Ugandans need low-cost housing.
Yes.
How achievable is that? With all the amenities you've mentioned.
Yes. I was saying, and you asked what the we means.
Yes.
It's a collective effort that we all have to take to make this happen.
You keep saying the we, collective effort. I want to know, break down who the we are.
The countries that have been able to fairly perform on housing, or to say have achieved greatly on their social housing and low cost, whatever you call it, housing, government has led the board. Government has spearheaded intentionally the real estate and housing sector. When I say that we, the number one we is government. I think government needs to come up and take the lead on affordable, social, and low-cost housing.
When we say government, Mr. Wilbur, I'd just like you to mention the three bodies in government that are core to the real estate sector in Uganda, that push housing in Uganda.
Ministry of Lands and Housing and Urban Development, the mother of housing and real estate in this country. URA, I think, has a role to play in terms of thinking of how to incentivize the real estate sector. And of course, other bodies, MDAs that support, those that work on roads, UNRA, those that provide water, those that provide power, all in those areas. And of course, the local government, the Ministry of Local Government is key, because now leadership is brought down to the local level and everything starts and falls on leadership.
True.
I think the local government has a part to play in guiding real estate development in their different areas.
Now,
and of course, working together with the municipal councils to make sure that the planning is done properly for those areas before we even start the development.
I know you're still enjoying. This is still very exciting. Trust me, the information we're sharing is information you'd like us to go on and on about. But unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time, whereby we have to end the show. But next Sunday, we'll still continue with this. Mr. Wilbon, set with us, continuing with these details.